everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Miss Johnston and today I am bringing you a grade 2 lesson for patterning and algebra. So this video is actually going to be divided into two sections. Part 1 is me explaining the lesson and how to go through it with your child, whereas part 2 will be me teaching the lesson if you would rather that option. So we'll get into it. And first I'm going to start with the learning goals that come directly from the curriculum. So in grade 2 for patterns and relationships, students will identify and describe through investigation growing patterns and shrinking patterns generated by the repeated addition or subtraction of 1s, 2s, 5s, 10s, and 25s on a number line and on a hundreds chart. They'll identify, describe, and create through investigation growing patterns and shrinking patterns involving addition and subtraction with and without the use of calculators. They'll identify repeating, growing, and shrinking patterns found in real-life contexts, represent a given growing or shrinking pattern in a variety of ways, create a growing or shrinking pattern, create a repeating pattern by combining two attributes, and demonstrate through investigation and understanding that a pattern results from repeating an operation. So those are all the learning goals for this particular lesson. Now before we actually get into the lesson, I just have a couple key points for parents to consider. So this video is a guide for how you can guide your child through the lesson. And one important aspect is the last page where your child will actually use patterns to figure out the amount of tablespoons in a recipe. So when you go through that with them, feel free to leave it in tablespoons at the end if you actually want to make the recipe so that your child can make a connection, or you can have them use this recipe. Now if you have them do the pattern with the tablespoons and then use this recipe, this still works great because they are practicing measurement, so it still covers the curriculum, just not the pattern curriculum. So feel free to do whichever one you'd like. So the recipe is there for you, but theirs will be in tablespoons on the back page. So now that we've gone over that, we will get right into the lesson. Before we actually begin the worksheets per se, you can start with the definition of a pattern, and then you can ask your child to look around the house to see if there's any patterns they notice in the house. Maybe you have wallpaper or you have trim or something that has a pattern directly on it. Allow your child some time to go look around and see if they can figure out any patterns. They can come to you and tell you what they see, and you can help them distinguish if it's a pattern or not. Once they've actually explored around the house, maybe found some patterns for themselves, you can go over what different patterns look like, which is on the first page. Now, once that is finished and they understand the different types of patterns there are, and if there's any in the house, they are going to practice skip counting as a type of pattern. So, for example, the first one is count by twos, and you're going to color all the boxes blue. So your child will just go through, color in every 2 boxes. So they will do that for all the different amounts, so by 3s, by 4s, by 5s, and by 10s. So they'll be able to see a pattern within what they color and what they draw, for example, triangles or circles on some of the numbers. So once they have completed the skip counting, they actually move into finding patterns. So, for example, there's 4 wheels on a wagon, and your child is going to have to figure out how many wheels you would have in total if you have 6 wagons. So you would start with 4, and then if you added a second one, that would be 8, and so forth. You would continue that pattern. Same thing for number 2, how many corners are in 7 triangles, so you would start with 3 and go through. And then how many pennies have the same value as 8 nickels, so there's 5 pennies in a nickel, so you would continue the pattern with 5s. Now you don't have to tell your child that, they can figure that out, but if they do need a guide, there will be an answer key separate to the document with the worksheets. Once they have finished both sides of this one, that is when we get into the cookie pattern and cookie recipe activity. So for this activity, I took a recipe for cookie dough, and keep in mind the ingredients here can be substituted in the recipe on the first page for parents. I did provide some alternatives if your child can't have dairy or gluten, or if they can, then you can just use the recipe as is, but I wanted to provide a couple options. So I took all the ingredients and I put them into tablespoons. Now the one key is this last one, the vanilla, it's in teaspoons. So what's gonna happen is there's 3 numbers in the pattern already. The pattern only goes to 5, and your child will have to figure out what the pattern is. Then they actually have to write in what the pattern would be. So say it's +1 each time, or -1, whatever the pattern is, they can write it in there. Now number 5 is the amount of tablespoons you actually need for the recipe. So that is going to be the key if you are actually going to make the cookie dough to eat. Number 5 will be the value for the recipe, and there's a little spot to put all of those down here. Now, once you finish the worksheets, if you decide to make the cookie dough, that is kind of the culmination of the lesson. And other than the math portion of it, enjoy eating the cookies, talking about patterns, and just spending lots of time with your child, because right now that's kind of what we have to do. So thanks for checking out this lesson for grade 2 patterns and algebra, and check out part 2 if you want me to teach the lesson to your child. Just make sure that you're there so that you can pause the video, and I will see you in the next lesson. Thanks.